Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Smackdown review. And this is hopefully going to be a good review. Now, the first thing that happens in this show is that the Big Show comes out. Now, last week, the Big Show basically knocked out Tensai and Brodus Clay. And he basically comes out. He doesn't say anything about them. But he does say that he wants his championship back because he lost in 45 seconds. And then he says he gets even more angrier because basically with Daniel Bryan losing the championship in 18 seconds made him feel even worse. Particularly that show, he really didn't have much to do. So he says, I don't care what it takes, I'm going to be the next champion. Then we got Randy Orton coming out. And he says, excuse me, get in the back of the line because I'm the one who's next. And from what I understand, later in the night, they are going to have a challenge against one another to see who's #1 contender. But before that's even announced, guess who comes out? ADR, who I believe is the one who deserves the shot because of what Booker T did with unbanning the Bro Kick. And he says, both of you get behind the line because I'm the one who should get it. And as he gets into the ring, he gets RKO'd. Something that we have seen a lot of. This isn't something that's not common. We have seen this a whole bunch of times over the last couple of months between ADR, between Randy Orton, or with the Big Show. Either Big Show knocking somebody out, ADR complaining that he got screwed, or Randy Orton RKOing somebody. It still did what it needed to do. Set up for tonight. For the night show of Randy Orton going against the Big Show for #1 contender. Now this is the next thing which I say made no sense. Antonio Cesaro against Santino Marella for the U.S. Championship. Why? No build, no Apsana. Even at one point you lose to Cobra. Antonio Cesaro wins. This is what I hope wouldn't have happened when he won this championship. He's now become irrelevant because, simply put, he has nothing to do. He has no one to go up against except Santino Marella, the only person they consider putting him with. They could have done something more. Even if they had to put him against Zack Ryder for a little while with some type of program, it would have been more interesting. But unfortunately, they did that with him already. And with the uppercut of destruction, it became empty. Antonio basically now is completely irrelevant. And if I'm right, he's relegated most of the time to superstars with that title. Unless they give it to somebody else. He'll roughly be seen on television unless Apsana comes back into it, or maybe Santino. What I'm believing, and which I thought was going to happen, was that Apsana was going to come down to the ring and go with Santino. That did not happen. She didn't even go to Antonio to try and explain what happened. The only thing that was mentioned was a tout or a Twitter from her, and McCool basically said that she's very upset. This is the worst storyline they could have for this man, who used to be one of the members of the Kings of Wrestling. Now, I really didn't see that in ROH. I really don't watch it, but what I understand is him and his partner was very good. And once they brought him up and his partner, they didn't team them together. They do nothing with them. So Antonio Cesaro is just a mess. It's a waste. Next, you have a replay which came out through the entire night. They broke it up. What happened with Daniel Bryan and Kane when they were in the diner. Now, seeing it again, it's pretty much boring in the sense that they do this all the time, whatever happens with Raw. But if you're going to make this clear, you got to keep this storyline as best as possible. I'm not really feeling most of the storyline because they're dominating the entire show of Smackdown. That's what they did the last time. And it feels like it's become dominant. And I don't like that. The show cannot just be around Daniel Bryan and Kane. It's going to get very boring if the storyline gets flat. And I say that the storyline isn't flat yet, but it's beginning to curve downward, slowly. Because we don't know what's going to happen on Raw this coming week. We don't know what's going to happen to Smackdown the next week. If it's a rehashing of what happened with them still going with their doctor, it's going to become very dull and it's going to be crap. So I'm hoping to do something more to spice it up, and I really hope in these shows they don't dominate it. But that's what they've been doing. The next thing which really pissed me off, and I'm going to write this in the description, what pisses me off, the match that should have happened in a pay-per-view. You have Natalya versus Beth Phoenix. Now, dudes, ladies and gentlemen, understand this. They've had almost nothing for the divas to do. The most dominant divas they have currently that can at least decently wrestle and look good in the ring enough that they can be considered something, particularly in Albany in this show, was Beth Phoenix and Natalya. Beth Phoenix and Natalya are considered the strongest divas they got. There are no other divas stronger than them. And they have both been booked terrible. What should have happened in the last 6 to 9 months was that they should have had a feud between these two, because Natalya turned face at one point, Beth became heel, and then it switched back and forth where Beth became face, and then Natalya became heel, and then even when they were both heels, they were both best friends, they could have made a storyline out of this, and they could have made this a pay-per-view match that people would be very happy to see, because if you saw the crowd of Albany, it wasn't just because Beth's town was in her town, which is my town too, New York. I live in New York. But the point is that these two divas have basically, if it wasn't on Superstars or NXT, you've never seen them go up against one another. They've always teamed together. It's been almost zero contact. And in this case, this should have been a pay-per-view match. It wasn't that long. The crowd was really behind Beth Phoenix, which was good. This was her hometown, and it was good to see it. And Beth wins by basically a double roll-up. And you think it was going to end there, particularly what happened when Eve basically did two things. One, she attacked her last week when Caitlyn came out and said it was a blonde who attacked her, and then said it out basically, this is going to get dealt with. I do not trust this woman. Basically. But guess what? At the end of the match, she comes out and says, because of what's going on in our investigation, Beth Phoenix, you are indefinitely suspended. And then a little interaction between Beth and Natalya saying, don't blame me, this is all you. This made me think of what I said at least 3 Smackdowns ago, at least, when I believe it was when Caitlyn was going up against Eve, and then when she won that match, and then was going to, no, it was the Night of Champions, I believe, sorry, when Eve won the Night of Champions, I said, I think this is going to be a power grab. And during the time when Eve was dealing with Teddy Long, I also believe I said in one of my videos that she's going to try and cause some type of friction so Teddy will be kicked out, and then she will try and move up in the ladder. Well, what happened when you saw the backstage with Beth Phoenix, Teddy Long, and Eve, along with Booker T, really makes me believe that Beth was just a catalyst for Eve to finally get up in rank. Because I believe that Teddy is going to be bye-bye. Because I don't think Teddy's the one to cause this. I do have a person I'm considering, I'm going to say at the end of this video, who is the actual attacker. But essentially speaking is this. What Eve said about Teddy telling me this is what I should be doing, and then you see Booker T having a little conflict with him, with Teddy Long, makes me believe that this is a grab of power for Eve. It's a flat out simple. Eve is trying to divide and conquer so she can become the entire head of Smackdown. This is my belief. I could still be wrong, but this is how the storyline looks like it's going. So, also, you have, let me see here, you have the Zack Ryder Wade Barrett match. Okay, there's a lot of things wrong with this match. One, it was short, which was alright, because you gotta make Wade Barrett dominant. But the problem, sorry, paper might be in the screen, but the problem is this. Wade Barrett doesn't have the full look. I understand he comes from somewhere in the UK, I believe Brisbane. I said it before and I'll say it again. With Steve Lombardi, and I did a video with Steve Lombardi going against you-know-who, the one that shall not be named. And I'm not going to say the name of it because I don't want the Slug Daddy upset. But essentially, Steve Lombardi's Brooklyn Brawler gimmick was very good. And saying the Brisbane Brawler right now might be the best thing for Wade Barrett because there's not enough behind him. Yeah, he was able to knock out Zack Ryder, but they're not letting him get over on his opponents well enough. What happened with Justin Gabriel and now Zack Ryder is a prime example. They're not letting him beat his opponents easily. He needs to beat his opponents easily. They're making it difficult for him. Zack Ryder was, at the end of the match, very resistant. And when he won, it just didn't feel right enough. And what is the idea of the Souvenir as his name for his knockout signature move? The Souvenir? I don't like it. I don't get it. I mean, I understand the purpose of it, saying he's open for business. I'm going to make sure I give a souvenir to everyone doing it, but it could be better than this. He should have the Brooklyn Brawler type of feel. He should be allowed to come in, look like someone from the UK, from one of the, think of it like this, in the United States, there are certain areas in certain cities you don't go to. In Chicago, there's the South Side, I understand, you don't go to. In New York, where I'm living, you don't go to Crown Heights, Brooklyn very well. At night, you don't do it. Not when you know there could be shooting and people getting their ass kicked. I'm not saying that in New York and in Chicago are very nice places, and those places can't be great. But I'm saying there are rough and tough areas all around the world in certain cities that Wade Barrett should be taking advantage of, even if he can't use his own hometown. Say the most roughest place that has the most toughest name to give you something more. Let him come out in jeans, just like the Slug Daddy said. Let him come out in jeans. Let him come out in a different type of persona. He's not getting anything this way. I just don't feel it from him. So now we got the Miz TV segment. And I can say, I like Miz TV. I like that it's going to put Miz over. The segment was a bit long, and the way it started was a reverse of what happened in his first show. Instead of him basically having the mic and not allowing Booker T to talk, it was Sheamus who took the mic and basically talked the entire segment, basically talking down the Miz. The Miz got his own mic, which I was happy about. He didn't try to grab it, and then he spoke about, if you want to see me, go by the book for, basically from Foley talking about me. Look at my movie. Listen to Sirius. Listen to his radio program, which is a good plug, but honestly, it didn't feel completely right in this segment. It could have been done differently. Only thing that made it understandable was at the end, before Dolph Ziggler came out, was that you have Sheamus being told by The Miz, you're not taking it seriously. And then Sheamus went on his tirade saying that I'm serious, I do whatever I need to do, I think this is a privilege, this is a blessing, trying to be the good face. And once Dolph comes out and basically said, I don't personally care. Oh, I wish to say that Dolph really needs to do something about Vicky. Even though the crowd really booed and gave a good, basically, heat for Vicky, it just didn't translate for Dolph. I can understand what the Slug Daddy's saying. You can't have an excuse me work for the show off. It's not working anymore. If it did in the beginning, it's not working now. It's becoming counterproductive. And honestly, it's becoming highly annoying, even though Vicky's not a bad-looking woman. I wouldn't mind meeting her somewhere. But essentially speaking, if you're going to make Dolph more relevant, and right now with that case, he's not really relevant enough, especially what happened later, you need to let him get cut loose from Vicky. Let Vicky go with someone else. Maybe if she's with the different tag teams out there. They need a new manager for one of the tag teams. That would be one. And I'll explain that later. But when Dolph came in the ring and said, it doesn't matter who you face at Hell in a Cell, I'm coming to get you. And then with the fight, and The Miz is the one who got the first blow, it would have been better if Sheamus had gotten beaten a bit and not had the edge. Because he beat them both, threw them both out the ring. A simple, boring segment where the face wins. I like it when the heels get more over the face, because essentially it gets very boring. It's like an old cliche 1950s cowboy movie where you know that the good guy wearing white is going to beat the bad guy wearing black every single time. Sometimes it's good to mix it up, and you don't see that with Sheamus. So the next thing we got was the Jerry segment. Now, I wish to say, I know a lot of people saying, who wants to hear more about Raw and SmackDown? It's tiring. Yes, I understand this. And they did this throughout the night. But this is important. You got to understand this, ladies and gentlemen. Jerry the King Lawler right now has been on both shows. He worked on SmackDown at one point, and then he worked on mainly Raw. He did a little bit of SmackDown, I don't remember when, but in a small time he did. And then he mainly stayed on Raw. But essentially speaking, you got to understand, Jerry the King Lawler is still very relevant. People still remember how good he is, and he's still been active in the ring before his heart attack. He had been so active, you got to show him. And people who usually don't look at Raw, who look at SmackDown, not saying they didn't know what happened to him, they need to see him. So I can say this was good. I'm very glad that they put this in. Now, if they do this more than this SmackDown Raw, it needs to give updates, not give big segments. I'll say it's okay. As long as it's small segments where Cole just says how he's doing, he gives a tout or maybe anything else, as long as it isn't a big segment, so it's okay. And I also wish to say, and you can say a lot about how the WWE can be very biased to wrestlers, can be biased in so many ways. How they treat their wrestlers a lot of times is crappy. Let's be honest, a lot of wrestlers who got treated badly have deserved better. But I can say that WWE does a lot of charity. And for the, I believe Susan B. Clark, and talking about trying to help breast cancer, as well as several other of them, like they also showed a scene from, they're trying to send clothes and any type of possessions you can get, well, basically anything you can get to go to Africa, and the Make-A-Wish Foundation. I don't have a problem when they show these scenes because, look, you hear a lot of crap about when it comes to companies. You hear a lot of crap about CEOs getting millions of dollars and don't give anything back. It's understandable. You see that and you feel they don't care, but honestly they do. And this is a good example. Because if they're willing to do this, and this is not just for, if some of it is for politics, particularly what's going to happen in November. In other ways, they don't do this. When there is no politics, they still team up with other different organizations that are non-profit or profit to try and do something for the people. So I can say that them still doing things to help others, and I wish to plug JBL, 7 Summits for Children or Kids. This man who you know, where you always hear him saying that he's on Fox News, he doesn't give a damn about people, he's nothing but some rich, and I don't know if the Spread Daddy would know what affiliation he is, and honestly it doesn't really matter. The man does care about people as well. And when it came to the tribute to the troops, you can see that he was the one who came up with the idea. And he's a part of WWE, and the WWE kept it up, and I wish to say, thank you, JBL. I thank you very much. I really do. Now, the first tag team tournament. Oh, finally, they're doing something different. The tag team tournament, and I hate this first match. The Rogue Scholars. When it comes to Rhodes and it comes to Sandow, I like them. I'm glad they're together. But why in the hell it had to be the Usos? Dude, that wasn't right. Why couldn't it have been Justin Gabriel and basically Tyson Kidd? Let them squash them. Why it had to be them? The Usos, and I think I'm going to do a video on the Usos because I have heard they have been around for many years and they have not even once had a chance to carry the strap. Not once. They've been allowed to go into the tag team title hunt. They've been allowed to get to the final match. But they've never been allowed to get the match and get the straps. So one of these days I'm going to do some good research. I'm going to find out why in the hell the Usos don't get a shot. Because it ain't right. The Usos lose to the Rhodes Scholars, which I'm happy about because now you got a good team. These two have great chemistry together. Now they just need to, when they have the theme song, they need to have their own theme song, not using Cody Rhodes songs. Give them their own theme song and let's see their name. They didn't even have the name up. They just showed the individual name. That's stupid. So give these guys what they deserve. Now, here comes another match that, honestly, I don't understand. I get it. Don't get me wrong, ladies and gentlemen. I get this next match. But I don't understand why there was no storyline, no build. It could have been done months ahead of time, in a couple of months. Months ahead. You could have done this. But this now, Tensai against Ryback. We just had last week Tensai and Brodus Clay get the shit knocked out of them by the Big Show. You could have had something with the Big Show and Tensai. You could have something Big Show and Brodus Clay. Maybe that's coming Monday. You never know. I wish to say you don't know. They may do this next week. They may do this on Monday. You don't know. But with Ryback now, I understand you want to put Ryback against an opponent bigger than himself, but you could have done this differently. I mean, where's the Great Khali? He's not doing anything. Have Ryback deal with the Great Khali turning heel again. Something. Give Ryback something more. It wasn't a bad match. It was okay, especially once you actually can see Ryback having enough muscle to lift Tensai on his back, which is almost a 400-pound man, and then does his march and wipe him out. That was good. And particularly the crowd there went ecstatic for Ryback. I'm so happy he's going over. We need more monster faces. And now it looks like they're pushing him hard. And that would make sense what's going on with Tensai. But the problem we have here is this, ladies and gentlemen. Ryback is going to be a great addition to WWE. The problem is right now, he's becoming boring for the simple fact he has no storyline. He's only squashing people. The little bit that happened on Raw, when he faced CM Punk, and what happened with The Miz, and he squashed him, good. It's great, but there's a problem. He has no storylines. And I'm not bored with him, but other people are probably beginning to get bored with him because he just squashes people and there's nothing for him else to do. You got to see more. We need a storyline for him, so hopefully that's going to work. Final match, Orton versus Big Show. Orton gets attacked by ADR in the back, and I don't understand why Orton has to squash him when he comes out and says, I'm going to be the one you're going to match up with. It would have been better if Booker T came out and said Orton's not able to fight, because after Orton smashes and squishes and demolishes ADR, he totally gets demolished by the Big Show, which is good. Don't get me wrong, the match was at least, you saw a good back and forth match, at least enough that you thought that, I actually thought that Randy Orton was going to win. I know they need Big Show to go up against Sheamus, but I thought Randy Orton was going to win it actually. But when you see he sold everything, the injury, the beatings, and then the choke slam, which was a nasty one, that looked like it would give you a headache, and then afterward getting knocked out, that, I can say, Randy Orton is now doing what he's supposed to have been doing more than a few years ago. Unfortunately, it has to be the Big Show, but to more younger talent, this is what he needs to do. He needs to put them over more. In this case, unfortunately, it has to be the Big Show because he's already been put over for years. But essentially, this is what Randy Orton from now on must do. Wherever he's going to do after this, now that he's not going to be #1 contender, if he's going to be working with talent, younger talent, he needs to lose some and needs to win some. This is how you bring up the talent. We need this. And when Big Show said, Sheamus, see you in Hell in a Cell, that was basically the end of the show. I can say that in this show, the one thing that made it more interesting, which I actually thought that might be a possibility, was what's going to happen with Eve. Eve trying to claim or trying to grab power. So this makes it a C+ show. That's the only reason, because honestly, most of this was a lot of segments. Honestly, a lot of backstage segments, a lot of video packages when it came to Daniel Bryan and Kane. That was just a little too much. I liked it, especially when you see, if anyone's ever heard of Harry Met Sally, a very old movie, and the guy in Harry Met Sally said to the girl named Sally, I think it was Meg Ryan, and he says, you fake moaning in bed, look at Daniel Bryan and Kane. That's what they did. And that Mae Young segment saying, give me what they're having, priceless. So it's a C+ show. Now I hope you enjoyed the Zane View. Subscribe and comment. I'm sorry this one's a little late, but I've been very busy. Now you have a good evening, and I hope you like this Raw coming up.